And we're live. Welcome back, everybody, to a new episode of the Wheelie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Atoll, and I'm joined again this week by Electrek's publisher, Seth Weintraub. How's it going, Seth?
I'm good.
Awesome. And this is actually a special episode this week because we are sponsored by Tern Bicycles. Can you tell me a little more about that, Seth?
Yeah, it's just so Tern Bicycles, one of our favorite bike companies, is sponsoring not only the podcast but also our coverage of Eurobike, which I'm about to leave on my trek there, but it starts next week. Tern recently released the Quick Haul, and we also are big fans of the NBD, or I think it's officially no big deal, but they're a little NBD bike that we covered recently. So we'll talk more about that later in the show.
Okay, awesome. So, yeah, we've got a pile of interesting stories to talk about today, Tern and others included. Just off the top here, we've got an interesting story about Amazon switching some of their delivery vans to electric cargo bikes. There's also a new electric bike transmission from motor maker Bafang. We did a review of the Ride1Up Prodigy XR e-bike, which is a really cool, low-cost mid-drive e-bike with a Broza motor. We're going to talk about a newly released Honbike U4 e-bike that just looks wild. Let's see what else. We've got Tern coming up, of course, but we're also going to be talking about an opinion post that we wrote about how electric bicycle companies should really start incorporating USB-C charging, and we're going to tell you why. There's also a new electric scooter on the smaller two-wheeled EV front that's made by a European company, Äike. We're going to talk about the SONDORS Metacycle, which is apparently close to shipping, though it's a little bit ambiguous. And for those that want to get somewhere between a car and an e-bike, we're going to talk about electric scooters as sort of a smaller form factor than a car, but perhaps better than a bike for people that want to feel like they've got a little more power under them. And last but not least, if you want to go a little bit closer to the car end, we're going to talk about Moke America's new street legal low speed vehicles, which are four-wheelers, but they're not really cars. So some interesting things. But where are we going to start here today, Steph?
All right, let's start with Amazon to use walking electric cargo bikes to replace thousands of van deliveries.
Right. So right off the bat, I think we have to qualify what type of electric bike this is. We call these electric cargo bikes, but really these are four-wheeled pedaling electric vehicles, often called quadricycles in some countries. And so in a way, it is an electric bike because, it's got handlebars, pedals, a bicycle seat, and a mid-drive motor. But it really looks like someone took one of those Amazon vans and just like shrunk it down into like a fifth scale little mini e-van. So this is a really cool way that Amazon is trying to replace some of these larger vans. And I think it just makes so much sense for crowded urban areas because, the whole point is that in a lot of places, think, New York City, for an example, there's just no space for these giant vans. You see them parked in bike lanes, double parked in the road, and it just doesn't work in crowded urban centers. So if you can take something that's basically the width of just a wide bike, maybe the width of handlebars, and it's got a big cargo box on back, and you can have one person pedal it around with electric assist, then you're just taking up so much less space. Obviously, Amazon needs to have more of these to replace a single truck. But what a lot of delivery companies do is they have sort of these mobile hubs where they might have a truck parked somewhere out of the way in a city, and then you've just got four or five of these sort of mini little pedal electric quadricycles that go back to home base, load up on packages, and go and can basically continue their package delivery. So to me, this is like the best way that you could have delivery vehicles in a city is by just shrinking them down into something that's not that much bigger than a bike. I mean, can you see this working, Seth?
Yeah, I automatically go to my time in New York City as like my city experience, and these would be fantastic. We had a UPS driver that would just get a ticket. He would just park way just on the sidewalk, blocking like not just part of the road, but part of the walking area, and of course part of the biking area. And he'd just be like, "Look, there's nowhere else I can park," and they just eat a ticket every day, just to park where they parked, so they could deliver to our block. Um, so this would be perfect for that, and I'm assuming that's probably pretty common around major cities. So this makes a lot of sense. I always wonder, like, it's really nice that it has a cover for the the rider. But I always wonder, like, does this eliminate people who aren't in, like, some of the UPS drivers are, most of them are pretty healthy actually, but some of them less healthy. I wonder if, you have to have a certain health level to pedal this bike around, that maybe not all UPS people or Amazon delivery people in this case um, are that fit, or maybe they become that fit actually, by riding these around. What do you think about that?
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, it does eliminate some people that wouldn't be, fit enough, though, of course, because it's got an electric bike mid-drive motor, it's going to help you a bit. But I've also seen in the comments someone mentioned that, it's a bit of an issue for disabled drivers that might be able to operate a van, but
Right.
not one of these. And so there certainly is that barrier there, though I think that these are never going to, obviously totally replace vans. And in the same way for mail carriers, there are walking mail routes, and someone who's not fit enough simply
Right.
wouldn't be applicable to a walking mail route. So I think it'd be a similar situation where among the Amazon drivers, if you're fit enough, then you sort of qualify for this vehicle.
Yeah, and I guess, like, if you were officially disabled, like, there would be no problem just having a throttle option
Yeah, yeah,
or
absolutely.
or a
I
version.
mean, yeah, that would be easy to do. I mean, it's just a little bit of hardware, and
Right.
that would certainly make it a more fun vehicle.
For sure. Well, these are great to see around. I know DHL's got their own thing going. I know UPS has some stuff. So it's definitely the way the world's going right now. Um, let
Absolutely.
let's talk about electric bike motor maker Bafang, which is the biggest, I think, out of China uh, out there, and they have a new 3-speed automatic shifting hub transmission.
Yeah, definitely. So, when I first saw this news, I was like, "Oh, cool! A motor with a three-speed internally geared hub." So it's not actually a motor, unfortunately. It is just the hub, which is interesting though, because we had speculated that Bafang would eventually get into making transmission parts because we know that their motors can sometimes be tough on transmissions.
Right.
But this isn't quite as robust as we were expecting. This is still meant for modest power mid drives. But what we have here is still an interesting piece of kit. It's still an automatic shifting 3-speed internally geared hub. It's designed either for belt or chain drive, and so you could put it on a lot of different bikes, and you could even put it on a non-electric bike. It doesn't, require a motor, but that's where it's really going to shine
Hmm.
because it does basically, tie into the motor. It reads the speed that you're going, the cadence you're pedaling, and it will automatically shift for you with those shift points being adjustable. And so, on some of these nicer bikes that we've tried, like the Harley Davidson's Serial 1 bikes that have automatic shifting, Tern's bikes have automatic shifting on the nicer ones. It can be a really cool feature, especially when it shifts down for you at a stop and you're not like left in high gear kind of thing.
Yeah.
So as long as they get those shift points right and they can really dial it in, then I could see this being a really cool piece of kit. Though that is sort of the tricky part, is making sure that it's like a value added thing and it's really shifting smartly and it's not holding you back and you're like, oh, why is it lugging kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll have to try it. When do these hit the streets? Do you know?
I'm not sure yet. Bafang isn't the quickest at putting out a lot of their products, so it could be a little while and before these are out there. But I will definitely be interested, just like you, to get some time on one of these and see what they've done, and if a motor maker can really make a good transmission.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, like a hub motor has kind of a transmission, as long as a geared hub motor does, and Bafang obviously knows how to do that. I wonder, is this going to see, like, when I reviewed the Luna Eclipse, I was like, it's fantastic for going from like 10 to 15 miles per hour, but like after 15 miles per hour, the cadence starts to go way up. And, is there a way to have like even 3 gears would be enough for that? I wonder if Bafang is thinking, all right, we're going to put this inside a motor and selling it as a 3-speed, human gear and variable internal geared motor. You think that's something? I mean, is that are can this be applied to that, or am I
Yeah,
thinking?
definitely. No, no. I mean, what you're talking about is doable, and in fact, Bafang has rolled out a design for a 2-speed hub motor, so it's got its own automatic gear in there, and
Hmm.
so that's a little bit simpler. I think this is going to be a more complicated design, but theoretically, I could see them rolling that all together. So what you're describing isn't like a pie in the sky idea at all. I can see them doing that.
Yeah, I mean that's really where we need to go on those, those belt drive bikes that have a rear hub motor. Like you can't really just have one gear unless I mean, obviously you can have like the those hubs in the back if it's a mid drive. Just like this one, I think this was probably built for mid drives. Although, what did you say, 80 nanometers of torque? That's a little bit,
Yeah, I think it's rated for up to 80 Newton meters, so that's pretty powerful. Most of your Bosch and Brose on those motors, but definitely not Bafang's higher
right,
power motors.
right. Yeah. What is the BBSHD or whatever put out? Is that 80?
I think it's 160
Oh, okay.
SHD. Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
So not even close. All right. Well, yeah, there's a lot of opportunity here. I would love to see, but Fang seems to be the, kind of out there, whereas the Bosches and Roses of the world seem to be kind of in their own little, like, let's do another 250 watt motor. So that'll be interesting to see. All right, moving on. The best mid-drive electric bike on a budget. Ride1Up Prodigy XR e-bike review. Yeah, I like this one, especially the Broza motor here.
Yeah, I was gonna say this one's right up your alley as a Broza fanboy, so you're gonna like this one. This is, I think, the most affordable Broza powered e-bike on the market right now. If anyone knows one that's lower priced than this at $2,300, let me know. But as far as I can tell, this is essentially the cheapest option, though the bike is by no means a cheap bike in that it's got a lot of great parts. It's got that 9-speed Shimano Alivio. It's got an integrated battery. This specific model has a rigid fork, which is actually quite nice, but for $100 more, you can get the sort of trail mountain bike version with a suspension fork. I've got the hydraulic disc brakes. I mean, this is very much a mid-tier commuter bike, not like a specialized or anything, but not an entry-level bike either. And so for 2,300 bucks, you're getting a very nice urban style electric bike here, something that you could use for commuting purposes, for grocery getting. It's got that beautiful rear rack there that's got a beautiful tail light built into it. I mean, they really did a nice job with this bike. Included fenders, included lights. Like it was really hard for me to find something to complain about here.
Hmm.
It's a bit heavy when you compare it to some of the lighter European bikes. 50 pounds isn't actually bad for electric bikes, but if you compare it to like a specialized Turbo SL, which is their like super light lineup, you're carrying around an extra 10 pounds or so. So,
Right.
there's a little bit of give and take here. It's also a direct to consumer company, Ride1Up, big fan of them, but it's not like there's a bike shop in every town where you can take it in for service. If you have a local e-bike shop, or your bike shop works on e-bikes, that's great, but you don't get the dealer network of like a Trek or a Specialized, that sort of thing. But if you can give up a few of those niceties that you get with these bigger companies and their $4,000 bikes, then you can get a nearly comparable quality bike, I would say, for $1,500, $2,000 less. So to me, that's really the big selling point here: is you get the really nice German motor, you get the high performance, the class 3 28 miles an hour, but it comes in at just such a reasonable price for those components. And really, that's what has so impressed me by this model. I mean, what do you think of everything you're getting here?
All right. So this is like my perfect, like if I spec'd out a bike for my commute, this would be it. Like I was just trying to think, like, what would I do differently? I mean, I'm kind of looking at that rack and thinking to myself, it looks a little like it only has one thing down to the, um, you know, the back sprocket area. I wonder if like they could have made that a little bit more reinforced and you could put more weight on it. But like that's an edge case. Um, maybe like would a belt drive with a hub on the back be better? I don't know. I think this is probably pretty good. Um, yeah, this
Yeah,
is this
I
is
mean,
basically what I would spec out if and basically my favorite bike ever is a 2017 Rally Redux IE, which spec wise is very similar to this. So the only thing is, maybe I don't need the. No, I like everything. I was going to say I don't need the wheel covers or the splash
The
guard thing.
fenders.
Fenders, yeah. But I do actually like. Sometimes I get to the coffee shop and my shirt's all dirty and stuff. So I don't know. This is kind of
Yeah.
like the perfect bike
And these
for
are
commuting.
full metal fenders too. These aren't even like your cheap, plasticky fenders that they throw on there to sort of check the box. Like they
Yeah,
really, put in the right components here. I mean, like you're saying with the belt drive and the internally geared rear hub. If they had that, it would be like, like time to worship this bike,
right.
especially at
But it
this
would also be
price.
like $1,000 more expensive, probably.
Yeah, I mean, I can compare it to my Priority current bike, which is like similar spec in terms of performance and parts, except that it does have the Gates belt drive and it has a New Vinci, or I guess Enviolo now, internally geared hub. And that one, when I bought it, was 2,700. Now the price is up to like 3,300.
Right.
But I mean, that's $1,000 more, and you're actually getting a probably lower quality motor. It's a truck run motor, so it's an Asian manufacturer. It's a fine motor, but it's not a Broza. So
Wait, Truck Run is
you
that's not the one that was bought by Porsche, was it?
and that was a Fazua, I
Oh
think.
yeah, that's right. Sorry.
Yeah, which is also I believe a German company.
Right.
So I mean, like dollar per pound or whatever you
Hmm.
measure a bike by, like this is just such high value, I would say, for anyone that wants to get closer to a bike shop e-bike, like a Trek, a Giant, Specialized, whatever, but they can't afford a $4,000 bike. This
Right.
like gets you pretty darn close, I would say.
Yeah, and what I really love about the Broza motor is like you get exercise, like you're pedaling, but it doesn't feel like you don't hear like the and you don't feel like the jerkiness. It's kind of just like, sometimes I look down and I'm like, is this thing even on right now? When I'm talking about my 2017 Broza bike. And I'm like, well, I'm going 25 miles per hour up a hill. It's probably on, like I don't think I'm doing that by myself. And it's interesting also. We're looking right now at the mountain bike version. Um, what do you think about that? With it's an extra hundred bucks for the mountain bike kit, or
Yeah, yeah,
and that
$100.
that's a pretty good deal. You get those nice Maxxis tires, and you get
The
the
suspension fork too.
yeah, it's a big a lot of, I don't know, what is that, like 3 inches of
Yeah,
play
at
there?
least I think. I mean, I don't recall the travel off the top of my head, but it's I
Looks
mean, if you
significant.
do trail riding, then that would be a great, hardtail bike. You give up the fenders, which you don't really need as for a trail bike. You go out there knowing you'll get dirty, but you get a great motor, and that suspension fork in an otherwise, like solid bike. So again, 2,300, or I guess 2,400 for the XR version, or XC rather. And you've got a great trail bike that you can ride all day, and is built well and is going to give you that higher performance, torque sensing, mid drive motor experience compared to a cadence sensor on a hub motor bike, which is fine if that's what you're starting with, but once you try a nicer torque sensing mid drive motor, it's kind of hard to go back to an entry level bike.
Yeah, I can't believe how close to my preferences. Like even the seat looks like a good seat. Like there's nothing really to complain about here. Like I would be BSing if I was like, "Oh, you know, I don't like really good brakes." Like there's like literally everything on here is nice.
Yeah, the one thing that now that I'm looking at the pictures that
Uh-huh.
might have made it just a little higher quality is if the fork had a through axle instead of the like
Oh yeah.
skewer. So
Okay.
that would just made it a little more rugged. But I mean, I think most people are buying this as a simple commuter bike, and while that would certainly make it a more robust bike, you could hit some crazy pothole at 20 miles an hour and your axle will be fine. Probably for most people, those quick release skewers are still going to be strong enough.
And how many piston hydraulics are these?
That's like two opposed, so it's a dual piston, but it's like the single, set of pads. It's not the
Okay.
dual set of pads for the quad piston.
All right. I guess we could kind of complain about that. I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, at a
it's
certain
a
point,
great
it's like diminishing returns.
right. Yeah, and all these things would jack up the price that we're, like the belt drive is not cheap. Neither is the better brakes, and this is all going to be fantastic. All right, all
Yeah,
right. We
it's
got to stop gloating on this thing. This is too much right now.
yeah, definitely.
All right, moving on. And that is the best mid-drive electric bike on a budget, I think. So I love this company. The new belt drive Honbike U4 electric bike looks so good. You'd think it was purely a pedal bike.
Yeah, so I mean, can you even see a motor or battery on this thing? Like, I
Yeah,
don't see one, right?
yeah. It's
Like, this looks beautiful.
yeah, Honbike. Like surprisingly, it sounds like a Chinese company that might not be you know innovating, but all their stuff is really cool.
So yeah, part of that might be because they're actually a Japanese company. We don't see too many Japanese e-bikes, but
Hmm.
this is one of them. And so just below there is the video that we did for their first model, which is a folding version, and also it's got this like kind of cool origami style to it. But now their new U4, it takes some of those same like design points. You've got the really cool mag wheels, but it does a new frame. It's not a folder anymore, but it's got this sort of modified X frame, super minimalist. Like, I mean, it looks like they basically took two round pieces of tubing and welded them together and made a bike out of it. It's just so minimalist, sleek, and it's like what Van Moof would be if they cut off half the frame tubes.
Right. Yeah, and I look at this like triangle thing that they did, and I'm like, well, isn't the bike seat going to be off? Like, because you have this thing, and then you have the bike seat on the outside. But actually, this tube. So I don't know if you guys could see the arrow, but this tube goes out because it has to go around the outside of this bike. So it's kind of like on an angle. So like then the seat post is in the middle, and then this, the low bar is on the outside. So it's just a really interesting design. And sorry about the Chinese Japanese mix up. Han, I think Han Chinese, but it's HAN. So my bad there. But what a sweet looking bike. And good news, it's going to be at Eurobike, so we're going to get to check it out.
Yeah, and this is what I'm going to need to see in person because just like you were saying, like I'm trying to wrap my mind around how these tubes work, and
Right.
it's almost like an Escher painting that like I
Right.
feel like it shouldn't work.
Right. Yeah. I almost wish there was like a top down version of the image that we could kind of see like where do these tubes actually go around the seat post and that the thing. I think it works pretty well. I don't know. We'll have to see in person, but I love the design. And to answer the question you posed earlier, like where are the batteries stored? It's like in that main tube. It looks like pretty big batteries from this, probably 21 2180s. Is that the one?
2170s. Yeah, it almost
2170s.
looks
Yeah.
like those new those Tesla like 4160s or
Right,
something.
those
That's
thick
like the
ones.
proportion.
Yeah, they're just D cells probably.
It's like a
Re-
mag light. Yeah.
right, a big mag light. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the way of the future. Like, I think eventually that's just how things are going to be, and hopefully you can uh, pull the batteries out once they're dead and put some new ones in. You don't have to like crack the crack the bike in half to change the batteries. Um, but I think not like yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of bikes are going to have this kind of design. A lot more anyway.
I'm just picturing cracking the bike in half to get the batteries.
Yeah, I mean, well, we'll see how they replace those. Like, what's the one? I think Van Moof, right? They have similar idea, and you can take the battery out, but or no, only a bike shop can take the batteries out, or something like that. They had
Yeah, this
some
one I'm
stipulation.
guessing that the method would be you take the steering tube out and then they slide out the front where the headlight is. But
Okay.
I mean, that's a wild guess at this point until we can see this thing.
Yeah, that's also interesting because the bar goes or that tube goes to the right of the rear uh, wheel. So does that put weight on the right side of the bike because batteries are obviously the heavy part. Well, it'll be interesting to see. That's it's an interesting bike right there.
Yeah, stay tuned, everyone.
Yeah, we'll have. Oh, all right. So next story is our sponsor, Tern. They have the NBD as the latest high quality urban electric bike, small in size, big on features.
So yeah, the NBD, this is a cool one because it's designed to be basically the most accessible Tern bike yet. If you don't know who Tern is, they make a variety of bikes, but most of them center around like small format cargo bikes. So the idea is that you could carry a couple of kids on there or like a week's worth of groceries, but yet it's not a massive cargo bike. It's still something that fits easily in an apartment and basically takes up the same space as a typical bike. And part of how they do that is with smaller wheels, 20-inch wheels. They've got their own cool rack system that they've developed that gives you a lot of real estate behind the bike and also lets you park it on its tail, sticking up like a coat rack or something. And so they've taken that same concept and with the NBD, they've made it even more accessible. So it's a low step through design, which they haven't really done before. Their other bikes are fairly low, but this one makes it even easier to step through. But it still retains a lot of what we know and love about Tern. You still have that Bosch motor. You still have the internally geared rear hubs. You still have a huge weight rating, which in this case it's 140 kilos or 308 pounds. And yet it's a pretty lightweight bike at 44 pounds,
Well,
especially considering it's designed for cargo. If you look at like a Radwagon 4 or something, I think it's like 80 pounds maybe.
right,
Like,
double
this is
this.
maybe half of that. Yeah. So it's
And
they really know what they're doing when it comes to cargo bikes that don't feel like cargo bikes.
yeah, and Turn's bikes are always like super like I don't want to say over engineered, but they just feel like they could just take tons and tons of weight and they're so stiff and like it just feels like such good quality. And it's always like, yes, they're expensive because, they're really done well. And people, there's always that YouTube comment who's like, oh, it's $4,500. Like I could buy a car for that. Like there's always that comment, but like this is a really high quality bike and turn bikes are always really high quality. So, there's people who like really high quality stuff and will pay a little bit more for it. I think that's kind of the market here.
Yeah, and this is like, you're right that people would say, well, I can buy a car for that. But the point of this bike is you don't need to buy a car. Like
Right.
you could ride this, several hours a day, every day. You could basically use it like a commercial vehicle almost. It's not, just designed for weekend rides. This is a full car replacing kind of bike.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right about, it's built to a different standard. And in fact, I think Tern was one of the first companies to actually certify their bikes to a new German cargo bike standard for ensuring that it can support the weight and also has components like brakes and stuff that can stop 300 400 pounds of weight because it's not just having a strong enough frame, it's about having components that can get it up to speed, bring it back down to speed, and aren't going to wear out under the weight rating that it's given. So it's really designed to be something that goes above and beyond, which is reflected in the pricing. $4,500 is not a cheap e-bike by any stretch of the imagination. Though they do have a more entry level model that's in the high 3,000s, I think, and that
Hmm.
has a chain drive, so you don't get the belt drive, that sort of thing. But still, just everything else about the bike is built to a higher standard, and that's really the point here.
Yeah, and so I notice also there's a very low center of gravity. All the stuff is kind of like below the rider's knees, kind of thing. So that makes it really easy to get on and off. It's easy to step over. It's easy to kind of just it kind of gives you confidence in a way that you know bigger bikes are a little bit more or less wieldy, I guess. And then, of course, turn. You lower the seat and you flip the handlebars down, and it's really easy to get into like the back of a car. I think we have a
Yeah,
picture of that.
absolutely. I mean, these are just between like the drop down bars and the rear parking. It's like this thing will just fit anywhere. Like I still love the fact that it stands up to park it. It's
Yeah,
like,
those
what
are
other bike can park in like 2 square feet?
right, and that's great for people in apartments and all that other stuff as well.
Yeah, and I think all of their bikes do that. I think it's like a Tern thing.
Yeah,
And in fact, speaking of their other bikes, they this one unfortunately won't be here for a while. It's coming out in early 2023, but they also unveiled and have launched the Quick Haul, which is not quite as nice as the NBD. It's designed to be more affordable. I don't recall the exact price off the top of my head, but it's definitely a lot less than the NBD, and it's another sort of small cargo style e-bike. But that one we're also going to see at Eurobike, and that one will be on the market before the NBD as well. So it's cool to just see that in this sort of interesting niche of small but powerful e-bikes with a lot of utility, they've got just so much variety.
yeah. I always love turn bikes. It's just like such a great experience. All right, let's move on here. All right, this one's after my own heart here. Listen up, e-bike companies. You need to give your e-bike batteries USB-C charging stat.
100%. Like I'm looking around my desk right now and I see like 4 USB-C cables. Like
Hmm.
there's no reason that everything in my life except my electric bike should charge with USB-C. It's the closest thing we have to a universal standard. And in fact, Europe is already going that way, making tech companies charge everything by USB-C.
Yep.
So
And we think the iPhone
e-bikes,
next year is going to be USB-C.
yeah, exactly. So like it's the way of the future. It just makes things better for consumers. It probably eventually makes things better for companies with the exception of their profits. At least it streamlines their production. So it's high time that it came to electric bikes. And in the beginning it was like, all right, you're limited to 100 watts. That's not terribly fast. But at the same time, if you consider that most 48-volt e-bikes come with a 2 amp charger out of the box,
Right.
48 times 2, that's right under 100 watts right there. So
Right.
doable with 100 watts. But there's also the latest USB-C protocol that goes up to, I want to say, 240 watts.
Right. Yeah.
So we could be looking at even higher power charging there.
Yeah.
And
240.
even if
You don't even need to include the barrel thing if or whatever charger. 240 seems like you're done.
yeah, even the highest power e-bike chargers, sometimes you'll get like a 4 or like, wow, a 5 amp charger. Those I think go up to about 240, 250 watts. So that's really all you need.
Yeah. So and that would be fantastic because you can charge your MacBook and you can charge your bike from the same or your bike battery from the same charger, and theoretically somebody at your work has a USB charger when you forgot to bring it with your e-bike, and you can use your e-bike charger to charge up your MacBook, even your phone in the future. It's kind of like a no-brainer. But what's kind of even more interesting about that is then you start to get like, all right, well, if it's got USB in, why not USB out? Like the part that kind of does that can't, it's a few bucks more, but then you get like such a great utility. Like you could probably power your iPhone or your iPad for, you know, 30, 40, 50 charges with a huge e-bike battery.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some e-bike batteries have a USB-A port, and I've even heard about, after hurricanes and stuff, people using their e-bike to at least keep their phone charged. But if you had a USB-C port, you're able to put out more power than, like you said, keeping your MacBook running, keeping your iPad going. Like there's a lot you can do with USB-C. So there's some serious upsides here, and hopefully we sort of lit a fire under some of these manufacturers and got them at least, with their eyes open to the idea that people want this. Now we'll just have to see if anyone takes us up on it.
Yeah, and so you're talking about 200 watts in the new USB-C power delivery protocol. You could even theoretically hook up like a small inverter, like you would see in a car or something else, and then power like 110-volt applications as well. So there's just so much innovation that could happen in the e-bike battery space that and it will happen. Like we've already seen juiced come out with that little power adapter thing. We've talked to other bike manufacturers. We've said, hey, is this kind of thing coming? And they're like, yes, stay tuned, we're working on stuff like this. So a lot of innovation coming here. Very exciting.
100%.
All right, moving on slowly here. Spinning. All right. Oh, went too far. All right, I don't know how to pronounce this, but new European-made Äike T may just be the best designed electric scooter in the world.
Yeah, so you got very close. It's the Äike.
Okay.
So the Äike T, and Äike apparently means thunder in Estonian. And this is essentially the only electric scooter that's not made in China, at least on a large scale production. And so this Estonian company, Äike, they developed this new scooter as sort of a offshoot from another company known as Co that builds all of the Internet of Things connectivity for a lot of scooter companies. So, the scooter sharing companies, like you see all those scooters littering the street corners of your local city, most of those are probably powered, at least the connectivity part, by Comodule. And so these guys started by creating all that technology, but then they saw basically how bad the sharing scooters were, and they said, we can build something better. So they built this, really high quality European-made electric scooter. It only costs like $1,000 or so, which I say only, but it's got some really nice components. It's like super waterproof. It's funny, they demonstrated it by riding around in a kiddie pool here. If you guys get a chance, go watch the video in this debut video for the Äike T. It's hilarious. That's actually the CEO there in the bathing suit riding
Really?
around on it. Yeah, that's him. And it's built to hold like 300 and something pounds, 330 pounds, 150 kilos.
Okay.
It's got 11-inch wheels. It's got automotive grade tires, so no inner tubes like a typical bicycle or scooter. It's actually got air filled tubeless tires like you would basically have on a car or a motorcycle. It's got full connectivity, which you would imagine it would based on where these guys came from with building all the connectivity for sharing scooters. So if someone steals it, you GPS track it. And in fact, this is their second scooter. With their first scooter model, the CEO told me that they've got a better than 100% recovery rate.
What does that mean?
So when they've gone around and recovered scooters that have been stolen, they call the police, and the police come with them, and they like crack open some storage unit somewhere. They usually find other scooters from other companies that have been stolen, so they count those too, and so they've recovered all of theirs plus many other companies' scooters.
Wow. All right.
Yeah, so that's
after watching this video, I really like their vibe, especially with the CEOs who's willing to put on the goggles and the bathing suit.
Yeah, he's all in on this. But there's one other thing that you're really going to like, and it relates to the last story we talked about. So this is, in fact, the first electric scooter in the world that has USB-C charging, believe it or not.
Still my heart.
Yeah, so, and it is bidirectional. And it also has, like we talked about, the second port. So you can do 100-watt charging with any, 100-watt laptop charger, but then they'll sell you a, higher power charger if you want to charge it up even quicker. So it takes like 6 hours or something on a 100-watt laptop charger, but they'll sell you like a 2-4-hour charger or something that can do it even quicker.
Is that USB-C or is that another?
No, it's they'll have a second connector. I don't know if it's a barrel or what, but it's a purpose made connector for fast charging, which in my mind is fine.
Yeah, that I totally get, and that's fine. But man, make that USB-C bidirectional standard. Well, good. This is we can fully get behind this company.
Yeah, way to go, Äike. This is like cool people and just like well-designed scooter. So way to go.
Awesome to see that. All right. Delivering. All right. So the first $5,000 SONDORS Metacycle electric motorcycle begins shipping this month.
Man, this is like the never-ending story for electric motorcycles. Apparently, the Metacycle is shipping this month. So if you're not familiar with the Metacycle, it was basically the first like hugely hyped low-cost electric motorcycle in the US. Good specs, 80 miles an hour, 80-mile range, $5,000, like just kind of checked all the boxes. But it was unveiled in January or February of 2021. So we're a year and a half later, after it was supposed to have shipped in Q4 of 2021. It was then moved up when Storm Saunders said that the production was moving ahead of schedule. So it was supposed to ship in Q3 of 2021. It then got pushed back to Q4 after delays, then got pushed to Q1, then Q2. Now we're entering Q3, and apparently deliveries are starting. So it's a little bit unclear whether the bikes have actually arrived in the US yet, whether the boat is like docking, whether they're in some distribution center in like the Arizona desert or something. It's not quite clear, but from everything we've heard, bikes are starting to go out and customers are going to get that white glove delivery, which apparently was a $700 surcharge on top of the $5,000, but it means that the bike will be fully assembled and just like dropped off, hopefully in your driveway, but they have to like work that out with the driver. So we're moving forward at least.
And do we know how many units are in this first batch?
I think it was 1,000, but I'm not positive. Don't quote me on that. But I think it's the first one was 1,000, and it's interesting because the batches are actually pretty important because the first batch is designed to be everything that they promised basically because they're kind of legally required. But future batches are going to have sort of not necessarily lower quality parts, but they might miss some features. So for example, the ABS braking is on the first batch because that's what they said they would deliver, but all future models are not going to have ABS braking, which I guess was probably pretty expensive, and they realized they could save some serious money by deleting that.
And do I see that this was signed by Storm Saunders?
Yes, good eye. So this is the signature series, founder series, like Willy Wonka Golden Ticket series. I'm not sure exactly what it's called, but it comes with Storm's signature on it, which I think is like printed on it because they're all like quite identical. So unless he's got like the Donald Trump perfect Sharpie signature, I think that's printed on. But it's funny because I remember seeing in like forums and stuff, people being like, can I get the signature delete option?
Yeah,
So,
you don't always want something like that.
Yeah, it's an interesting touch, and Saunders, the company, is kind of like, I don't want to say it's like a personality cult, but like Storm is certainly the fearless leader of this company, and there's it bears his name, right? So like this is very much a company built around the personality of its founder, Storm, and so it doesn't surprise me to see a signature on it, and this is very much his like like pride and joy, this project here that really was the first huge step outside of e-bikes and pushed the company forward. So like I can see why I'd want to have his name all over it, even though it already literally has his name on it.
Yeah, and like if you're a consumer, you're thinking, well, if the owner's gonna put his name on it, then he's backing it, and it's not going to be a piece of garbage. So that's a good sign, I guess. And obviously the Metacycle is kind of it's kind of gotten more like whenever we do a post on it, there's a lot of interaction, there's a lot of comments, there's a lot of page views, just because like there's so many people interested in it. Do we think this is going to be like a new, like smaller motorcycle class of vehicles? The simplicity here is kind of interesting. What's kind of like the big picture here?
Oh yeah, I don't just think so. I all but guarantee you that after the Metacycle is going to come just like a whole new range of this sort of style and size of lightweight electric bike, something in like the 125 to 250 cc equivalent of electric motorcycles. We've already started to see a few of these. We reviewed the Coulter, I think it was the ES1, and then Super 73 unveiled that, I believe it was the C1X, which is kind of a similar sized light electric motorcycle.
Oh yeah,
But there are others.
Do we know if they're going to be at Eurobike? They were at Eurobike. Yeah, they were there last year.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they will be. I think last year might have been their first year, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
I mean, I know they have a German, whole network there, so I'm sure at least their German team will be there. But hopefully they do bring the I think it's the C1X is the name of that one,
Yeah.
because I would certainly love to see that bike in person. But I think that's sort of emblematic of this new wave of light electric motorcycles that are going to fill this gap between high power, electric mopeds like, an Onyx or something, which is like kind of quasi street legal, and something like a Zero or a Harley that, is an electric motorcycle, but, or I should say a live wire, not a Harley, but is, a flagship $20,000 electric motorcycle. These are the kind of gap fillers.
Yeah. What about I remember you had a CSC for a while, a City Slicker. What are they up to in this space?
Yeah, definitely. So funny you should mention that. CSC, I don't believe this is secret, so I'm going to say it. Sorry, Steve, if it's meant to be secret, but they are bringing in a lightweight electric motorcycle of this class. I think it's going to be about 75 miles an hour. It is not available yet, but from what I can tell, we're probably looking at a few months before it'll be ready for pre-orders. They don't have the pricing just yet. I imagine it'll fall in a little bit above the Metacycle, but it's going to come from a company that's been a motorcycle dealer for like 30 years or something and has years of experience with electrics as well. So even if it costs a little bit more, you're going to be able to like go to a dealership and test ride it and that sort of thing. So I think they're going to enter this space soon and have some really interesting offerings as well.
And do we know anything about the design? Is it like simplified like this, or is it kind of like their other stuff?
It's Yeah, it's a little more like the Super Soco's, kind of an urban looking naked motorcycle. It's not
Okay.
nearly as impressive as the Metacycle. This has like a cast aluminum exoskeleton, I guess.
Right.
It's like a monocoque. So CSC isn't going to be anywhere near as like, you know, art
Designy.
project as the
Right.
yeah, exactly. But I absolutely think this category is going to just, blow up. Poor choice of words, but yeah.
All right. Moving on. Want to downsize a car but not ready for a bicycle? Here's why you need a seated electric scooter.
Yeah, so seated electric scooters, talking like Vespa style electric scooters. This is, in my opinion, like the best way to sort of split the difference between getting out of a car, but not feeling like you're, pedaling a bike on the side of a 40-mile-an-hour road with people buzzing your handlebars. For me, I commute basically almost daily on a new, that's like NIU electric scooter. And mine is the NGT extended range, so it goes like almost 50 miles an hour. It's got about 50 to 60 miles of range per charge. I can either charge the batteries there or carry them into my apartment. And this is to me like the perfect urban commuter vehicle. It's a two-seater, so my wife and I ride it everywhere. She doesn't like driving it herself, so she's usually on the back. But for us, it's like, we don't even need a sort of family car because we're just two people. We get around entirely on what's effectively like an electric Vespa style scooter. And so I shared in this post an interesting video from Ryan at Fort Nine. It's a very popular motorcycling channel.
Is it?
And basically, yeah, that's the one. So he sort of goes through and explains why car drivers should consider switching to a scooter. Now, he uses gas scooters as the example because he's kind of like from that old school gas world, but he makes some great points that, like, in terms of cargo capacity, you can actually haul, a small but decent amount of stuff. You're not going to do like lumber from Home Depot, but for most stuff you carry around daily, you can carry on a scooter. He talks about how, these aren't just the old fashioned, like, oh, our scooters for women kind of thing. Like, he pops a squat on one of these and is just straight up like, these inanimate objects don't care what my genitalia looks like. So he goes through and he like breaks down all the myths and shows how pretty much almost any urban resident could be pretty well suited by a simple, like, low cost scooter, and you would have so many more benefits. You could basically park anywhere, you'd cut through traffic, you'd have more fun on your way. The really the one downside, and like I have to admit it in this post, is that they're not as weatherable. So
Right.
like in a light rain, as long as you keep moving, like your pants aren't really going to get wet because the shield just like sort of curves the airstream around you.
Oh,
But when you
interesting.
come to a stop, you're going to get wet, and you need to wear some type of jacket, though you probably should be anyways because you're effectively on a motorcycle, so you should have some type of
Yeah, that's the other
motorcycle
thing.
sleeves.
Like safety is a big concern for a lot of people, especially riding on normal streets.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a balance here, right? So like, every time we go outside, we sort of do like a risk analysis of how much risk are we going to take on. And, for some people riding on a two-wheeled vehicle, whether it's a scooter, bicycle, motorcycle, whatever, like is out of the question. So that's not for you, that's not for you. But there's so much utility in these types of vehicles that if you can see yourself on two wheels, electric scooters are perhaps one of the best options for a city resident. And I mean, just like compared to electric motorcycles, which I love, but for in a city, like there's just nothing beats a scooter, especially because of the step through design, which I think if you scroll up, you can see how I carry like a bunch of stuff there on my scooter, just like between my feet with that step through design. Like the other day, I was carrying some solar panels to my friend's place, and like I just put them where my feet go on the scooter and just like rode straight over there. So it's just it's a huge convenience thing, and it's one less car on the road. So not only is it better for you in terms of getting where you're going faster, spending less money, not spending money on gas, but it's better for everyone because we're taking cars off the road. So if you could see yourself on a two wheeler, a scooter is something that I think people should absolutely look into if you're in like an urban environment. If you live in the suburbs or the boonies, it might not be the right vehicle for you.
Yeah, I live in the suburbs, and I had that what was it, Gen
Gen
Z?
Z.
Yeah, I had that for a while. What's kind of nice about just two wheelers in general is, my I think my wife and I were both going to the grocery store at the same time, and she took the car and I took a scooter. And she obviously beat me there because, it's a little bit faster, but I got out of the driveway first. She caught up to me on the road. But by the time she had to park, I drive the scooter right up to the door pretty much and just park it right near the door. By the time she parked and walked to the store, I was actually ahead of her, getting into the store. And I was like, this is the point. Like, you're not going quite as fast on the road, but the getting on it and getting off of it and getting to your actual location. Like, be selfish. This is a better vehicle. You don't have to walk as far. Like, you can actually get less exercise because you don't have to walk through a parking lot, and that's a motivating factor for you. Uh, this scooters are fantastic even in the suburbs, but particularly in the cities. So yeah, we'd love to see more people jump on these things. And obviously, energy usage, they don't even come close to what a car takes.
Yeah, that's interesting, your suburban experience, because I mostly live in cities, and so it's cool to hear that. I mean, I know like when my wife and I will take alternate forms if she's driven and I've taken my scooter. I mean, I'll be waiting at the destination like 10 minutes for her to arrive.
Right,
So
right.
cities, it's a huge difference, but it's interesting to hear even in suburbs, like you get some real advantages.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, like maybe our suburb isn't quite like every other suburb because I don't think there's a road that actually has an over 35 mile per hour speed limit, which is great for high speed e-bikes. And when I can go 30 miles per hour, people don't really try to pass me. So that's kind of like the sweet spot here. But I know like in other suburbs, there's 45 mile per hour, 55 mile per hour uh, roads that probably aren't, a good fit for slow, lower powered. Although your NIU probably goes what, 70, 80?
It only goes about 50 miles an
Oh,
hour. It
really?
goes 70 or 80 kilometers an hour.
Okay. All right. Well, uh, then it's kind of like what we've used, and it's pretty cool. All right. We have one more story. If anybody has any comments, please put them in there. We see a couple already. Um, Moke America's street legal open top mini electric cars want to trade high speed for high fun.
So these are, I know they look like, sort of little cars, but the important thing to note here is that these are technically not cars, at least in a legal sense. They're what's known as a low speed vehicle. So a lot of people will sort of colloquially will call these neighborhood electric vehicles, but an LSV is the federal class. What that means is they can go 25 miles an hour and are allowed to drive on roads up to 35-mile an hour posted, and yet they don't have to have all of the same like safety regulations as a full car, which allows them to be much simpler, lighter, less expensive, etc. And so in this case, Moke America is using the classic Moke design, which I think came from like a British development history and then has been redone a number of times. I think you actually wrote an original Moke or something like that, right, Seth?
Yeah. So when I worked in Hong Kong, there was back then Macau was like on the other side of the river, and we would take like a hydrofoil, which also really cool, over to Macau, and because we weren't like we didn't have like the right kind of driver's license to get a proper rent a car, we would rent these things. And actually, after the first time we did it, this was like way better means of travel. But all over Macau, you could drive these things, and they were fantastic. Because Macau is like a right hand side driving, so you would be on the I would be shifting with my left hand. That was a little bit hard to get used to, but super fun vehicles. And like I just don't understand why like obviously they're not super safe, but like I don't understand why these things aren't everywhere, especially the electric versions that cost not that much money.
Yeah, well, I can perhaps tell you why they're not everywhere, and I
Okay.
think it has to do with the price. So I hope you're sitting down for this
Okay.
because the number is about $22,000.
Yeah, that's a little
So it's
pricey.
a bit, cost prohibitive for most people, I would say. I think anyone who's buying this, it's kind of a, luxury side thing, the way you'd buy like, a motorcycle just for Sunday cruises and not as your main vehicle to get around. But if these were more affordable, I could see them actually as real car replacements, like we were talking about, especially for in the city. 25 miles an hour is not really going to be that useful if you're, again, out in the boonies, and for some suburbs, even that have like, 40-mile-an-hour roads where everyone does 50, then it's not going to be that effective. And in fact, technically, these aren't even legal on 40-mile-an-hour roads because they can only go on roads posted up to 35 miles an hour. But if
Yeah.
you're in the city where like, traffic often doesn't go faster than 25, this could be a really cool type of vehicle if it was more affordable. I mean, here's an interesting question for you, Seth. If you were still in New York City and you were considering one of these, at what price do you think you could see getting one of these?
Yeah, I mean, it would be the about the specs and the charging probably would be important. Also, New York City parking one of these would be. I don't know if I would get one in New York City, but if I lived in like Hermosa Beach in California, where I could just go to the store and or like in Florida, for instance, like a beach buggy kind of thing, I would love one of these things.
Yeah, I mean, this is like sort of effectively a golf cart style vehicle. And so you see a lot of like beach communities where people ride around in golf carts, except that you get like, seat belts, mirrors, higher speed. I think most golf carts go to like 20, and you're actually allowed to drive it on the road. I know a lot of places sort of look the other way for golf carts, but technically, due to federal laws, golf carts are not legal on public roads. And so, like, when you pull out of your driveway onto your neighborhood street, technically that's a not street legal vehicle in a golf cart. So this allows you to actually, drive around. And if you were stopped by a cop, it's like, here's my license, registration, everything's kosher here, officer.
One thing I had a question about, I remember doing some research on Moke before. There's like some ambiguity with the Moke nameplate because it's kind of been tossed around a little bit. Who actually owns? I think we were at a auto show one time, and there were like actually two Moke companies selling Mokes, but they were two separate entities. What's like the latest on that?
Yeah, I think that was the Paris Motor Show where they you're absolutely right. They're like competing Mokes out there. And I'm not sure how this company ties into it. I think this is the American arm of a larger international Moke conglomerate because they also sell, like, this specific company sells internationally. And so I think multiple companies have licensed the Moke name, and I imagine the dispute comes down to some of them believing that they've exclusively licensed it.
Hmm.
But the sheer number of Mokes out there makes me think that there's some ambiguity
Right.
in those licensing terms.
Right. And then also, I think Moke got sued by Jeep uh, at some point in its history because of the front grille and the kind of just looks like a Jeep that was if like the Jeep and a golf cart had a in a fair, this would be the offspring.
The love child of the Jeep and the golf cart.
Right. Yeah, it's just an interesting background. And, since I rode one probably every couple of weeks for almost a year, we kind of fell in love with these things because they were so much fun. Yeah, I just maybe the scale will bring the prices down, or maybe there'll be some, some lower prices on these. Has the company offered up any review units? Like, should we be expecting one of those in our FedEx deliveries?
Not yet, but they are located in Sarasota, I believe.
Oh,
So I might need to bounce over there, or next time you're in town,
yeah.
bounce over there and
We'll
see
meet in
if we can
Sarasota.
steal one for a few days.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be actually super perfect for Florida, especially with the rain cover and yeah,
Yeah, bring the family. It's a four-seater.
right, exactly. That's the thing. It's a vehicle that can take 4 people around. Interesting. Interesting. All right. All right, let's move on. I think that's it for the stories. Let's kind of dive into some comments. We got some cheerleading from the Facebook users. Thad Oviet says next is needed public charging stations for e-bikes. Thankfully, Parkent is working to fill that need. I think this might be a advertisement. We'll have to look into that. Thanks, Thad. I can't remember
So I believe
when.
this was in reference to the Amazon delivery vehicles. I think it
Okay.
came in then.
Okay. So that's a great point. The Amazon vehicles wouldn't work great in snow. Yeah, that's true. Fortunately, like cities often plow pretty quickly after snows. So that wouldn't be too bad of a situation.
It's
And
also a
then,
four-wheeler, so
right,
I mean, it's not gonna flip over like a bike. It's just gonna spin.
right, right. All right. With USB-C, this is an amazing point. With USB-C, can I carry a power brick as a range extender?
I
Yeah, you
think
can,
so.
right?
What's
Yeah,
stopping you?
exactly. In fact, you might be able to keep it topped up while you're biking, and that's one of the great things about USB-C. There's just really no end of the peripherals you can bring along. I mean, you could even like quickly add a light or a fan or any of the other like USB powered things that you might need on a bike.
So I
It's
just thought of an interesting issue though. So
mhm.
let's say that your power brick is a USB-C bidirectional and your e-bike is too, and you plug them together.
Yeah, you might
Does
be
like the
powering your
world
power book,
explode? Yeah.
or you might be charging up your power brick while you might lose power on your bike.
Something
Yeah,
to look into.
I've never actually understood why, like when they do that handshake, when you plug like your phone into the USB port of like when you have an Android phone that's USB-C and you have a MacBook that's USB-C and you plug them in together and the phone starts charging. Why is the phone charging from, like, why doesn't the MacBook charge from the phone? Like, how does it decide? Anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Magic.
Yeah, it's magic. All right. And then we have one last comment. Safety and price are the reason. I think that could almost apply to like 3/4 of the post today, but let's see,
I think
that's
that was the Moke.
yeah, the Moke. So yeah, safety, that probably doesn't have a really good crash rating. And the price, like I have to say, they have to bring that down a little bit. Like it seems a little bit outrageous to charge like, you could get like a Nissan Leaf for that price. Uh,
Yeah.
I don't know that people are going to buy them for that price. But, who knows? Like there's like otherworldly golf carts out there. And that would actually make a pretty fun golf cart if that's a thing. All right, that's all the questions.
Awesome. So thank you guys for tuning in. And while we normally are back every 2 weeks, we're going to have a special episode this Wednesday on the 13th, where Seth and I will be at Eurobike, the largest e-bike, or I guess all bicycles, but now it's mostly e-bike trade show in Europe. So we'll be back in 4 days for a special episode of the Wheelie Podcast. And then we'll be back to our normal 2 week normal schedule. So we will see you guys